working on the Uinta and Wasatch Cache National Forest as a forest fuel specialist. And I'd only been on the job for about 4 months, and I was asked to be an ignition specialist for a prescribed burn. And I wasn't asked until the day before. I mean, I knew they were going to do this burn. You know, I'd been briefed, but I hadn't been involved in any of the planning. You know, the burn plan had been done. They'd already pretty much planned it out, had what they needed, and it wasn't until the day before the burn where they asked me to be the ignition specialist because they didn't have anybody else. And so I said yes, and so that was the Cascade 2 burn. And not long, probably a couple hours after ignition, we had a pretty bad escape, and a couple hours after that declared a wildfire. And what started out as a 600-acre burn became an 8,000-acre wildfire with a Type 2 team. And we smoked in Salt Lake City for several days, badly. I mean, streetlights coming on and recess being canceled and people putting their kids on planes with asthma to get out of the smoke. You know, because it was, you know, it was a big deal. It was a national investigation, and then administrative investigation, which is when the person has the badge and, you know, have to swear, do the sworn statement, and that's how they determine the disciplinary action. And it drags on, and you know, you're being vilified in the press, and your own co-workers think you're a bunch of idiots, and how could you do this? And I mean, it was just, you know, so that whole thing is just hard to go through. And then, but I think the hardest part of that was that I felt really let down by management. I felt very like, you know, like we were all this kind of the sacrificial lambs, and management totally distanced themselves from those of us who were trying to do the work, meet the target. And so that changed me as far as, you know, I guess I always thought that the people that supervised me would kind of be there for me. So that changed. Well, I think getting through it, emotionally getting through it, and professionally getting through it, are kind of the two things. You know, how do you get through it and survive it and keep going professionally, you know, and continuing on with the mission. Mm-hmm. Part of it is first getting through it emotionally, you know, so that you can progress then on the professional level through it with your career. And I think I had a good, I believed in it. I believe in prescribed burning. And so I think I had a really good, a passion for it, and a belief that it was the right thing to do. And so I think just kind of having that basis, and, you know, having the experience I had with working in Florida for 5 years, where, you know, prescribed burning's huge. You know, we burned 100,000 acres a year. So having that experience, you know, and seeing all the benefits of prescribed fire, and so just knowing that it's still, somebody still has to be willing to throw the match down. And somebody still has to be willing to take on the mission and take the responsibility to put fire back in the ecosystem. And I just felt like that's, you know, that was my job. That was, you know, it's what I do. I love fire, and it was my job to do that. Mm-hmm. I think a big part of it for me, just because I look at other people that were involved in that burn, was just, you know, coming to terms with the mistakes that I personally made, or things I didn't speak up about, you know, and just realizing my responsibility and my accountability, and coming to terms with that, you know, and then that helps move through it as well. Mm-hmm. And I've seen people who, you know, haven't come to grips with it, have still absolutely take no responsibility, admit no mistakes, nothing. I mean, those are the people who can't get over it, who can't get past it. Mm-hmm. You know, and so for me, that was part of it, and talking to groups, and, you know, and kind of telling my story, and also hoping, you know, so that other people don't have to go through it. I think that that helps getting through it. It was hard. I mean, I lost a lot of sleep. I remember I truly remember lying in bed awake at night and going through all the things I felt like I could have done differently, and that I wish I would have done this, and why didn't I do that, and you know, and worrying about all that, and yeah, it's a hard thing to do. It's you know, it's human nature to get defensive and not take any, oh, that wasn't me, it wasn't my fault, but you know, for me, I had to come to grips. I had to come to terms with that. And I can remember right after Cascade, working on a burn plan and feeling a really extreme amount of pressure. The NEPA wasn't even done, and he wanted the burn plan done, you know, and was wondering why I didn't have the burn plan done. And I was telling him, because you don't have the NEPA done, and you don't have the silviculture prescription done, so of course I'm not done with the burn plan. And having to sit down and have really, you know, having to throw the Cascade 2 card at him and say, you didn't go through this. Yeah. You know, you didn't go through what I went through, and I'm trying to learn from it, and I'm trying to see all these things that could bite me in the butt. You know, and there's a process and a right way of going about it, and I think you're asking me to do it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And I had to have a very, you know, very strong conversation that I felt like damaged my relationship. It's inevitable, whether or not it's fire use, prescribed fire, suppression, yeah, they're going to run into it. Mm-hmm. And you have to, you know, the whole thing with like turning down an assignment, you know, now there's protocol to turn down an assignment on a wildfire. And so when you turn down an assignment, the responsibility is upon you to try and figure out a way to make that work. You know, so you can't just say, I'm not doing it. You have to say why you're not doing it, what could be done, what if there are things that can be mitigated to make that assignment something that you could take on then. And so there's a lot of responsibility then on just saying, well, you know, I'm not doing it. I mean, you have to step up and say, this is why, but if we did something else or we provided this, then maybe we could make it work. Mm-hmm. Or my group doesn't have the skills, but you might have somebody else who does. And that's, you know, that's all that communication stuff.